Hi, everyone. I appreciate you joining our group session today. We are going to be sharing some information about late assignments and strategies that hopefully will provide you with some support and assistance and help to learn how to be even more proactive than you're already being, and also to share resources that you are able to access from your phone devices, websites, and also your Holy Family resources as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And one thing I wanted to do before kind of going through everything we're going to talk about today is webinar etiquette. So just a couple friendly reminders. I know some of you may be very used to your online courses, and so some of this might just be redundant. But please remember to silence your microphone if you're not talking. Feel free to type your questions into our WebEx chat message box. And then this is just a reminder that this session will be recorded. We will not be able to see specifically your video, but any questions that you ask may be video or may be present on our video recording. Thank you. And we will actually distribute this on YouTube after we're all finished, so you'll be able to access this as long as you need. So obviously you can see who I am. I wanted to just kind of share a little bit about me. I am Amanda Mauser. I use the pronouns she, her, hers, and I am Holy Family University's Director of Student Success. I wanted to include just some fun pictures here as well with the picture of my face, but you can see my cat Buddy, and he's one of my favorite beings in the world, and I had just a little boomerang of him. He loves scratching plastic and stuff. He's not doing any harm, but just wanted to share that with you so we can start developing these personal connections, and hopefully you feel comfortable just interrupting the session anytime if you have questions, and then we will have an opportunity for questions at the end. So I can't actually predict the future, but these are things that I know that I have structured into this presentation. I wanted to make sure that I give you kind of a forward look so you can really know what we're going to be going over today. So I'm going to share with you tips and strategies that research suggests for college students when it comes to managing their assignments, tracking them, what to do if you fall behind, and really just validating how difficult your college assignments and also balancing and juggling outside responsibilities can really be. We're going to go through the difference between glass and rubber balls, as well as reactive and proactive strategies with your academics. I'm also going to offer quite a bit of free applications you'll be able to use, and then some examples of assignment tracking that we have. And then there will be some pause and reflect activities throughout this presentation today. And again, I'll put the contact information at the end of this presentation so you're able to follow along and ask any questions you might have. So now we're going to take a moment and just pause and reflect. I have 3 questions on the presentation that I'd like for you to ask yourselves. If you're watching live, you can feel free to enter some of those answers into the chat box. If you're watching the recording, you can feel free to just reflect on these individually, either in your mind, writing, or in group discussion if you happen to be with some friends. So please take one moment, go ahead and pause your video, reflect on these questions, and provide some answers to yourself. So some of the potential answers to these questions are, what are some reasons that your course assignments might be late? I think the important thing that I want to get across for you today is that happens sometimes, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad student or you can't manage your time. It's just that life sometimes is very unpredictable. As some of you may know, currently we're in the middle of these presentations and recordings while COVID-19 is happening. And so who could have predicted a global pandemic and switching to fully online courses, right? I don't know about any of you. I did not see this coming. But it's important to realize and have grace with yourself, be kind to yourself, and know that sometimes these things will happen. Sometimes you forget about an assignment, they might be like a family emergency. It could also be an honest mistake, right? There's a lot to keep track of, and sometimes it's difficult to remember every single deadline. And so that's something that we're actually going to go over a little bit later too, of how can you ensure that you remember. And sometimes you just get busy, right? You're balancing a lot, you're really making an honest effort to try to get things done, and it's just hard. The other thing that I experience quite a bit with students is also how mental health can affect your motivation and your ability to complete your assignments. And so we'll discuss a little bit about that in resources on campus as well. Some systems that students already use that might work for them are paper planners. Some students just really enjoy the process of writing things down. It helps them to remember better. They enjoy the creative decoration of what they're documenting, and that's fine. Some of our students really just can't depend on their paper planners, and so they want to use something electronic. So we'll kind of go over some of the resources we have for both, and then also some of the learning management software systems we use, like Canvas and Starfish, and how that can help. So, as a group, we can agree that there are many reasons why submitting assignments by deadline can be very difficult. But for our grades and our overall progress towards our degree, because that's why we're here, right? We want to get that paper. Submitting our assignments is super important. So what do? Right? We know sometimes this can happen. How do we handle it? So here's some things that actually research suggests could be very helpful. One is that they do validate, like I've already said, that regulating college and other outside responsibilities is hard. Sometimes we have it on lock, and then other times it's very difficult to stay on top of our assignments and feel confident in the work that we're producing. Something else is being intentional. So it's really important to actually schedule in time to think about these things. How am I going to anticipate changes that are happening? And we'll kind of go through some intentional strategies. And the really big part of this, in some specific journal articles that I'll share at the end of this presentation, having these intentional proactive strategies can help prevent poor sleep and increase stress, which who needs more stress in their life? And a big part of that too is when things do become stressful, when there are things that you don't anticipate, how can you cope with those? And how can positive coping strategies of learning how to handle and manage your stress affect positive academic achievement? Another thing that we're going to talk about pretty heavily are strategies to develop a work plan. A lot of what research shows is that having positive working habits, developing an actual plan, and then there's that piece of sticking to it, but developing an actual plan is so important to being able to set yourself up for success. And then another piece is your control of your time. It's very common amongst college students and just humans in general to feel like we're not in control of our schedule, right? Like we're just in this routine and like a hamster on a wheel, and we can't really control everything that's going on around us. So how can we create control into our schedule and feel as though we have the power in terms of when we do assignments, when we complete them, and how we're able to follow through on our tasks? Another big part of this, which probably does not come to any surprise, is that motivation and focus play a large role in your ability to submit your assignments by deadline. We have some apps later in terms of our free applications that can help you stay focused. And then also we have some tips of, what happens if you do miss an assignment? What if you miss an assignment, your motivation's off, what do I do with that? And one of actually the biggest things that research suggests for you submitting your assignments on time and really excelling in your classroom is your individual attitudes and expectations. And they actually suggest that they have higher impact than even your outside forces, right? So this national pandemic, pressure from friends, groups, the way that you approach learning, your professor, the course material and the content in general, it's actually, those things are less impactful than just your own ability to be kind to yourself and to have a positive attitude when it comes to your confidence in your academics. So I know that may seem untrue or too simple, but how hard is it sometimes to really give yourself grace and space to be human and make mistakes, and to like bounce back from a low grade average or an assignment that you didn't do as well as you were hoping for. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So I hope that you're getting at this point that it's super important to not only try all these strategies, but then also to work and develop that mindset. And one thing that it's really helpful to think about is this theory of juggling glass and rubber balls. What you hear a lot of the times is that we need to have time management, right? We need to balance our work, our life, our academics, our family. And personally, I find that to be pretty misleading. I don't know that I've ever achieved a balance in all areas of caring for myself, completing my tasks, investing in my relationships. But something that I have learned to do is how to juggle those, right? And sometimes some things are more important, sometimes they're less important, but how do we figure that out? Something that I find really helpful was actually included in a commencement speech at graduation from the CEO of Coca-Cola Enterprises. And I put some excerpts of their speech here. And essentially what they're describing is that if you were to picture your priorities as glass or rubber, where would some of those things fall? So what would take priority for you? So when you're managing your assignments, what would be an example of a glass assignment? Something that if you don't do it here, it's going to shatter and it'll have a big impact, right? It takes a long time to clean it up. Sometimes even no matter how hard you try, you can't clean up all the shards of glass. So what are some of those pieces? And some of that may be considering how many points an assignment is worth or how much percentage of your grade. So if you're in a course that only has 3 exams, And those exams are worth almost the entirety of your grade. It's really important to treat those exams with a lot of care, to make sure that you are continually working on that throughout the whole semester, you're utilizing all of your resources, versus something that might be rubber, right? Something that maybe is worth a smaller percentage of your grade, or an assignment that your professor has a nice extension policy where you know that you have maybe 2 or 3 days past deadline without losing points. That would be something rubber. If you don't do it right now, it's going to bounce to the floor like a bouncy ball and bounce right back up at you to catch. The only thing that's really important to think about with that is that eventually, if you're bouncing a rubber ball, eventually it goes like this, right? It jumps up, and then after a while, when it's bouncing, it gets lower and lower to the ground, and it's harder to catch. So that's just something to keep in mind. And I think the biggest thing here too is when you're thinking about your assignment tracking and submitting your academic work, you want to remember that you're also a priority. Your sleep, your eating and your nutrition and your hygiene and your social relationships, all of those things are also things that you're juggling. So remember, as you're mapping some of these things out or talking about tracking systems, that you are also keeping in mind that your time that is going towards your assignments is great, and we want to submit things on time, and at the same time, we want to make sure that we're also caring for self and investing in those other things in our life as well. The other important thing to remember is that, if you're studying for an exam, most of the time when you're looking at your syllabi and you're getting homework from professors, such as reading or small online assignments or practice quizzes, those are important to do on the timeline that your professor gives to you, because they are intentionally helping you study and prepare for material. That way you can be successful on the exam. So pay close attention to what your professor is saying and in what time frame they are telling you to do those things. Okay, so we're going to do another quick pause and reflect. So take a moment to go ahead and pause your video, think about these questions, and then we'll do kind of an overview in a moment, but take some time to think about this individually and share with your group if you're with one. So we have talked about this a little bit. When would a course task or an assignment be a rubber ball? Right? Those are those things we talked about. There may be small points. Maybe you're able to submit late. Maybe you've requested an extension and your professor has granted that. That's something that might be rubber, right? If I don't do it today, then eventually it will bounce back at me. Some of that might be even an end of the semester large course project, presentation, research paper, research project. Right? If I don't do that during the first week of school, is that glass or rubber? Right? It might be rubber because you can wait another week to potentially get that started. And like I mentioned, eventually, if your project, your research paper is due and it's 15 pages long and you need 20 different sources and that's due your 14th week, if you start that paper fully on the 13th week, that's going to be very, very difficult to meet that deadline, right? And really feel confident in the quality of work that you're providing in your course. So just remember that difference. And when would a course task or assignment be a glass ball, right? That's something that the assignment is quickly approaching. You know that it's content maybe you struggle with. So you want to make sure that you're providing yourself even more time to study material, to practice your problems, to complete your homework assignments. That way you're able to hand them in on time. And then, what other responsibilities in your life are rubber and glass? And it's important to specifically name those. For me, it is making sure that, I'm taking care of myself, that I am, either meditating or writing letters, which I love to do, to family and friends, calling people to check in on them, see how they're doing. So those are things I know that I need to schedule in time for. Otherwise, after a while, I tend to feel very demotivated and have a lack of energy. So make sure that you're reminding yourself of those things along the way as well. Your academics are incredibly important, but if you are not healthy, it becomes even more difficult to handle those. So something that I really suggest is thinking about your time management or your assignment management, your course management in two different ways. Right? So you have the ability to be reactive, you have the ability to be proactive, and sometimes we have to dip into both of those. But what I strongly encourage you to do is focus on those ways that you can be proactive in your course. Right? So an example of that may be in your biology lab. Maybe you are completing your lab assignments, your lab reports, but you're not feeling super confident about it. And so you're nervous, at the end when I have a final exam, how am I going to do in my lab final? Am I going to do well? Am I not going to do well? It's important to not wait until after all these lab reports are in and you have a non-pass or fail average to then go for help. It's really important to not do that, right? So if you are taking your first lab report and you feel like, I just don't think I understand this material, go to the Center for Academic Enhancement or a group study session and your professor before you get a grade on your lab report that will not allow you to pass the class, right? Or not allow you to raise your GPA. So that's kind of an example of being proactive versus reactive. A lot of the time students at the end of the semester or close to the withdrawal date, like, man, I really wish I would have gone to tutoring. I wish I would have gone to my professor. I wish I would have just done that reading when I was supposed to. I wish I would have kept up with my research paper check-ins, right? So submitting my reference page here, creating an outline here, introduction here. So be proactive, right? Set yourself up for success. It's not impossible to come back if you have a lot of out-of-date assignments or projects and be reactive and still be able to get some ground. It's not impossible, but it can make things a lot more difficult. So something to keep in mind, mostly what we're going to focus on today are those proactive strategies you're able to use. And if you're in a situation where life happened and you are late on an assignment or you feel behind, you can still use these strategies retroactively. So one is something we've already talked about is keep a positive attitude. Be kind to yourself. Just because you got an assignment back and you got a grade lower than you were expecting does not mean anything other than you might need to prepare a little bit more, right? Or maybe there are different strategies that you're not using that could be super helpful. And we'll kind of go through some of that and then at the end talk about campus resources, but it's important to speak kindly to yourself or to think appropriate and positive thoughts. Because if you don't, research shows that you start to enable yourself to think critically of yourself, and then also it does affect your motivation and actually makes submitting your assignments and doing well in your courses that much harder. So that's something first to keep in mind. To be kind to yourself, provide yourself some space to make mistakes, to mess up, and then just get right back to it. And one thing that I like to share is do not trust your brain. Right? A lot of us when we were in high school, it was very easy to keep track of assignments. Right? So we could remember, oh, I know I have that math test coming up and I have to write that English paper. When you're in college and you're balancing all of that plus family responsibilities and growing responsibilities in your finances, or even if they're things that you've already had to do, your brain eventually will fail you, right? We all have a limit to the capacity of what we're able to hold. So my suggestion is to make sure that you document and you write down everything you have to do. And make sure you do that as soon as you get the responsibility. So some folks find it helpful to keep a notepad, and anytime they have something going on, whether that's a notepad on their phone, whether that's a physical notepad that they carry around, anytime they get a task, someone says, I need you to do this, or they find out, I need to remember to do this, write everything down. Do not trust yourself to remember later, because eventually you're human and you will forget. And we don't want to do that with our important responsibilities. So do not trust your brain, write everything down. The moment that they're scheduled, you find out about them, or you're told that you need to complete them. And the other thing is set a schedule. So when you have that list of things that you know you need to do, you need to accomplish, set up a schedule. It is helpful sometimes to have that kind of everything list, and then to also have a daily, weekly, or monthly schedule, or a combination of those. So, it's helpful sometimes to be able to say, I know in this month, I need to complete these 20 things. But today or just this week, I only have to focus on these 5. So let me focus on just that and know that I have set up a plan to attack everything else for the rest of the month that I need to do. So you're able to hopefully be able to combat that stress and that anxiety around some of your assignments that you might have. So set multiple schedules, set multiple lists, but again, make sure you're doing that in a way that is centered, right? So you have everything in one place, you'll have it with you, but you've just kind of separated them into short-term things you need to do and long-term things you need to do. So you're keeping everything in one place, and then you're able to break it down and focus on a small bit. When you have a large project, like we've talked about before, maybe you have a large research paper at the end of the semester, break that up into smaller tasks, be smart about it. There's a graphic on the screen that defines what being smart means. One is to be very specific. So what is it that you want to do? You want to complete your research paper. What are the components of that, right? So your professor maybe has built this into your course where you have frequent check-ins, but sometimes it's not. So they may say, oh, your sources are due in a month. So how can you break that down and be specific? I know that I need to find 3 different types of sources. I need to find 15 total. So set a goal every few days or every week to find different types of those sources and record them. You don't have to wait until 2 days before to find every single source that you need for that project. And the other thing is to make sure that it's achievable. Make sure that you are considering your time in a realistic format, right? So it wants to be timely. We want it to be before deadline, but then also we want it to be achievable. So if I say that I only have a half hour in between my classes and I'm going to find all 20 journal articles that I need, that might not be possible. So how can you be realistic with yourself? That way I don't get through those 30 minutes and realize I need 4 hours and I have not planned for the 4 hours by deadline. So just keeping in mind that SMART format. And the other thing is to set up reminders. So if I have an exam coming up or a quiz coming up in one of my courses, so let's say in Spanish, I have a course quiz next week. Set a reminder on your calendars, or write that down as a reminder that, I know that a week before my quiz, I have to remind myself, hey, in a week, you're going to be tested on all the Spanish stuff. So start studying now. So set those reminders. A lot of the times I can say for myself when I was in college, I kept a really awesome planner. I wrote down absolutely everything. I followed all of those tips and strategies, and then I just totally forgot about my planner. So I would be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I had that worksheet due. And I would look back at my planner and be like, well, I put it down there, but Amanda's brain didn't really help me remember that. So it's really important to make sure that you set up reminders. One way to do that is on your phone. You also can put Post-it notes around some of your workspace. So if you're working from, a specific room, or you're using your car to travel to your classes, you can put Post-it notes in areas that you know that you will see regularly to remind yourself of upcoming timelines. And there is a balance with that. You don't necessarily want to overwhelm yourself with seeing those constantly. You want to be able to get space and get a break. So find that correct balance for you. The other thing is to follow up. So if I was supposed to email a professor about an extension on a paper, and I wanted to do that by Wednesday, remember, because I'm being very specific in what I'm going to achieve, I'm attaching a specific timeline to it and a deadline. I should also set a reminder on my planner, whichever way I keep track of that, for a week later or 2 days later, and say, reminder, you were supposed to email your professor on Wednesday, and check in if I did that. If I did, awesome, you get to check another thing off. If I didn't, then you want to make sure that you reschedule that in and adjust your schedule. Be flexible, like I've said multiple times, life happens. Something else that is so important that I can't emphasize enough is communicate openly with your professor. A lot of the times, students will say, oh, I didn't get that in, I had a late assignment, and then in a one-on-one meeting, I'll say with them, well, what did your professor say when you asked them for your extension? Like, oh, well, I didn't. I was really nervous. And while that's fair, and we get that, we want to look good to our professors and we want to have a positive academic reputation, at the same time, it's very admirable to have open communication about what you might be struggling with, and to ask for those accommodations with your professor. It's important to know that you really should be doing this proactively. So let's say you get sick and you have a test at the end of the week. You could email your professor. And just let them know, hey, by the way, I know I have this upcoming test. I'm trying to prepare as much as I possibly can. I'm really sick with a 102 fever. And I'm nervous about how that might impact my performance towards the end of the week, right? And work out a plan with your professor. That's your first thing that you could do, the first action that will hopefully help you in achieving a good test grade, a test grade that you're hoping for. So be proactive, recognize this is not guaranteed. Your professor has the right to say, in your syllabi, this was the date for your paper, for your reflection, and you're not completing that on time. So they do not have to give you an extension. The only exception to that is potentially an accommodation that you might have set up with disability services, which you have already hopefully at this point communicated to them. But just remember, it's not guaranteed. And also try multiple methods. Sometimes we realize when we're talking to someone in person, it's difficult for us to be very vulnerable, to really say the extent of what we need. So you have the option of also emailing them, going to office hours, the beginning of class, after class, and really get to know your professor as an individual. How do they prefer to be communicated with? Would they prefer to have all of that in writing? Would they prefer to have that in the Canvas show as a message? Would they prefer you to talk to them before or after class? And really start to learn those differences. And a great way to do that is to just listen when they share or to ask them. And the other thing is, if you are emailing your professor, just remember proper etiquette, right? So make sure you're addressing them. You're not using text talk, shortening your speech, but you are really making sure that you are detailing specifically what you're asking for and what you need. So this is kind of a long list, but it's those long anticipated resources that I was speaking about, and you can see them on your screen. And then I also am going to be adding in some pictures later, so you'll be able to see some of these examples. Part of that we've talked about is the thing, paper versus electronic, right? I think a big thing to remember, and this is kind of at the end of the slide here, is that you should be trying different strategies. See what works for you and what doesn't. If you're using one strategy and it's not working for you, it doesn't mean you can't achieve your goal. It just might mean that you need a different strategy, or you need more support, or you want to try a different method, and that's okay. It's really important to know that we have to cater this towards ourselves and specifically what we're trying to achieve. So I can say for me, you know, when I was in college and even before that, I just loved putting things on paper, and that's really how I preferred. But I realized that I didn't always have my paper with me. And I wasn't looking back at my paper. And so I had to transition to doing things electronically, using things like your Google Calendar, just putting in my calendar reminders of events I had coming up or assignment deadlines. And it was hard, I think, at first, because I really was very used to paper, right? It's one of those things where you're used to reading a book on paper and it's hard to read your electronic book. But eventually, if those strategies are working for you and you're trying really hard, they might work out. And so now I actually only almost exclusively put everything electronically, which I would not have anticipated if I hadn't really gave it a good effort and tried it out. The other thing that I'll show you later is some screenshots of Canvas and Starfish. Both of them are learning software systems that Holy Family uses specifically. And it will show you how to keep track of your assignments there. And they actually self-populate lists from what your professor puts online for your courses, which can be really, really helpful. The other cool thing is, well, you can get those things online. They're both through Canvas, and they both can be accessed through the student Canvas app, which is also really great, because if you have your phone with you or you have a tablet or a laptop with you, you're able to access those at any time. The other piece is we do have services at Holy Family specifically for our student success. One of that is the Center for Academic Enhancement. They're commonly known as our tutoring center. But they also do things like time management, sitting down with you and developing a plan. You can get writing support and writing help from there. So I have this large paper coming up and I really don't know how to tackle it. They can help you develop a plan with that as well. You know, the Office of Student Success is also available for those things, but sometimes we have different hours and different specialties. So make sure that you're utilizing both of those. The really important thing too, we've talked about focus, motivation, mental health. Our counseling center has available appointments for you to schedule to kind of talk through some of these things. Sometimes students utilize their services for very serious things going on in their life, things that they really need that mental health support for. And sometimes they do it because they're having a difficult relationship, or they have a difficult family emergency and they're having trouble submitting their assignments on time, and they need help processing through coping strategies for their motivation. And if you have a big project that you feel anxiety or stress about, that is also a great option for you. And those services are all included within your tuition. So, you know, it is free, as in it's no additional cost to you, but you're investing in your education. You might as well get full use of those services. Another one is also disability services, both which fall under the wellness services umbrella in our student affairs division. So if you are interested in counseling services or you're interested in disability services, they have all of their information online. And it also is included in your Starfish as well under other services. So feel free to utilize that. The other piece, if you're in your first year, you will have your first year course. And that's an opportunity where you have, you know, you haven't transferred in, this is your first college experience, and you are trying to figure out how to balance everything. You'll have faculty, staff, and student mentors in your courses, as well as your peers. So utilize them, figure out what strategies they're using that they find really helpful. Find an upperclassman student that you really admire, that you feel like is very successful, and you have goals to copy some of those behaviors. And you just ask them what they do. Any of that would be really helpful. The other piece is, you know, I kind of mentioned the Office of Student Success can help you develop these work plans. The other thing we do is we have group sessions, which is what you're in right now. We also do individual meetings. So if you want to schedule a meeting with one of our student success counselors, you're able to do that. We can sit down and we can even do frequent check-ins and, you know, look at, you know, if I am very far on my assignments, what do I do? And you're able to kind of sit down with someone, create a plan together, and then also schedule some meetings coming up. That way, you know, a week from now, I'm going to have someone checking in on me to see if I completed this list of assignments. So we did get a couple of questions in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and address those really fast before we get to our Q&A. One of them is how old my cat is. So my husband and I adopted our cat about 3 years ago, and he turned 6 on July 1st, 2020. So he's actually becoming quite the senior cat. So he's, I think, by human years in his 30s or 40s. Okay, and then another question is, what should I do if I'm so far behind that I don't even know where to start? And I think that's a really timely question. I was just speaking about the Office of Student Success. I highly, highly recommend just scheduling an appointment with someone. A lot of the time, students that come in for those individual appointments with a student success counselor are coming in because they are overwhelmed, they don't know what to do, and they're having trouble making sense of it all. And then we're able to sit down, we can listen to you, hear what's going on in your life, figure out some stress reduction strategies, as well as really develop a plan with you. And, you know, we can create assignment trackers together. You can try to create that yourself and then come in for feedback. We can also assess, you know, is this realistic? Is this working for you? What other strategies should we try? And just another support person there for you. We're also there to help you. You know, we've talked about the importance of openly communicating with your professor. Sometimes students aren't sure how to do that. So, you know, in those meetings, we can craft those emails together. We can help you in terms of really making sense of what your needs are and the challenges that you're experiencing and how to share that with somebody. And the other part we're going to talk about very soon is that, or those free applications. So on your screen, you'll be able to see some examples of assignment trackers. So the ones on your screen, actually, we're just taken straight from Google. So if you go into Google and you type in college assignment trackers, all of these will pop up. There's some great resources on there that I highly recommend. If you want to print out pieces of paper and write things as a paper format, you can do that. If you would prefer to keep record of all of these on Excel, on a notepad, or on Google Sheets, you have the option of doing that as well, because those are also accessible for you on the Google Sheets Chrome extension or the device on your phone. And you can also have the specific app for it for Google Drive. So those are some examples. Our office does also offer a template. So what we will be doing is, in the description of this video, we will be adding some of those links that you will be able to access there or on our website. Another example here are those learning management software systems. So at the top of the screen, you'll see a Canvas screenshot. You'll see different colored squares for different courses. And then on the side, you'll see where it has a list of assignments. You can find this in your app. You can find this on a website for Canvas. So if you go in there, it will auto-populate for all of your courses, upcoming projects that you have. You can put that in a view calendar format. You can put that in a list format. And you can either just check in there and set reminders for yourself to check every other day, every week, and plan out when you're going to work on those assignments to submit on time. Or you can set up reminders on your phone. To say, you know, put all of those deadlines in your Google Calendar, and they'll remind you to get those done. So those are options that you have. You could also print that out too and paste that around areas that you know you will see often to remind you of those upcoming assignments. The other picture here at the bottom of the screen is a picture of your Starfish dashboard. So they also do something very similar where they auto-populate all of those assignments. The other thing that they do, which is pretty cool, is that if you set a student success appointment or you're using that appointment to sign up for a group session, they'll also put those in there with you. So it essentially gives you the same information as Canvas, but you're also able to see any flags professors are raising for your courses, which is them sharing the concerns that they might have on your progress. You'll be able to put in there, you know, upcoming appointments that you have, and so it helps to keep those things in one place. Another piece that the Office of Student Success offers is our Clifton Strengths for Students. So in your first year course, starting in 2019, we were able to offer Clifton Strengths for all students, and that's an initiative that we will continue with. So you will have your top 5 identified. If you are not able to take that and you want to, we can do that. Essentially, it's an online survey that takes out, you know, 30 plus different themes of what are some strengths that exist. Is that, you know, ideation, being able to generate a lot of the ideas? Is it being strategic, being able to plan things out in an appropriate manner? Is it relator, the ability to relate to other people and to find common ground? It identifies those top 5 for you. And then what we have in our office is an excerpt that actually goes through every single talent, every single strength in that assessment, And it will put in there tips that they have for you for general academic life, study techniques, and relationships in terms of your academics. So you can see on the screen, empathy is one of them. And it will put in there, well, when you're studying a particular author, seek personal experiences and writings that help you identify with their thoughts and emotions. So if you have a create your own assignment where you're able to pick a TED Talk or an online video or a journal article or a short story to be able to write about, pick something that you have specific empathy for, something that encapsulates your emotions, and then you're able to find more passion for it. So that's just one example. They go through a huge list and check sheets for all 30 plus strengths. So if you are interested in that, student success counselors can also, in a meeting with you individually, set up a plan and go through those top 5 strengths, provide you a code to be able to take that, and then really be able to process through what are some specific recommendations for you to hopefully utilize your strengths to be able to achieve. Another piece of these free apps. So this is what I've been talking about this whole time. There's some pictures of them in the App Store or in your Google Play or Android, some apps that are helpful. So you'll be able to see Google Drive and Calendar, which I've already briefly mentioned. Stay Focused is an app that you can actually put on your phone or on your internet browser, and it can block sites for you. And you can put in there specifically how many sites, how long you want to block them. So for me, when I was in college, I would use that a lot and block all social media sites. I've also been known to block Netflix and Hulu as well if I'm trying to get specific tasks accomplished. So what it actually will do is you'll set, I want this list of websites blocked for 3 hours, and it will not allow you to unblock it at that point. And then we also have some to-do lists that are helpful. You can get that through Asana, you can get that through Evernote, Trello, where you can actually keep notes in there, take notes on your classes even, and then also share those into to-do lists and keep track of when you're completing things and what things are coming up. There are some other apps listed there too, just like reminders. Remember the Milk is one. With the cow picture, you're able to set reminders and it will notify you with upcoming deadlines, or you can just use the reminder app on your phone. And there are some other pieces in here too, called like class timetable and Studious and in my homework that will help you keep track of your assignments. There are those app assignment trackers, or again, we've mentioned you can use Excel, you can use paper as well, whatever works for you. So, I know I've shared a lot of different resources, talked a lot about things that might be helpful, resources that you might have, and I just wanted to ask if there were any other questions that we might have that I could address right now. So I'm getting some questions in our chat box here. One of the questions is, which of the apps do I actually use? So I'll go ahead and go back to that slide here. So I use Google Drive and Google Calendar every day. If my supervisor at work tells me, I need you to submit this report by 2 p.m. tomorrow, I will actually go into my Google Calendar at 2 p.m. and put report for blank due. And then I'm able to actually go in, see that it's there. I'll link any of the documents I have to submit, things I need to remember to do for that meeting. And then I'll be able to have that in there. If I have a big meeting coming up soon that requires a lot of work, I will actually make sure that I put in there reminders a week before or 2 days before to try to complete those. And then there was a question too, which ones are really great for students? For me, I actually recommend all of these, and these are actually taken from student suggestions. I highly recommend Stay Focused. That's one that, I kind of mentioned, you can kind of block sites. So for those that, you have a hard time focusing when you are watching videos or you want to go to YouTube all the time, that one's super helpful. And Evernote, a lot of students also use if they're taking electronic notes in class because you're able to keep everything in one spot. We also do have Google Drive as a part of our education software systems for Holy Family. So you have free access to Google Drive, and all of these apps have free versions or free features on it that you're able to use. So even if some of them say you need a premium subscription, all of these apps have a way for you to be able to use it free. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to let us know. I do know that some registered student organizations, some of the student groups that we have, they use Asana. And that's if you're working on a big group project, if you're working on planning a big event that's coming up. So this extends even further than just your class assignments. But you're able to do that also for other organizations you might be a part of, or even just for group projects in your classes. Trello is another one that I know some professors and students use at Holy Family. It's essentially a visual board and it allows you to, take a list of, this is what I need to do for organic chemistry, this is what I need to do for my nursing care clinical site, and then you can move tasks around as you complete them. And you're able to share those boards with different people. That way they can keep track of kind of where you're at if you're completing assignments and such as well. So that can be really helpful. Okay, another question. There are only 2 weeks left of the semester. How do I do all of this work and also study for my finals? It's a great question. I think that's a difficult part of needing to employ some of these reactive strategies, right? It tends to pile up, but that's realistically where we are sometimes. So how do we then, kind of take that information of all this huge list of overwhelming projects you have to do, also the upcoming ones, end of year assignments, and hopefully be able to do well on that. The biggest thing that I can suggest is developing a work plan. And then communicating with your professor. So I highly recommend, if you're in that situation where you're not sure where to start, you don't think it's possible, you don't know what to do, you're thinking you're just going to take the F, take the D for a failing grade, I would really suggest setting up an appointment for an individual meeting. At that point, a student success counselor can go through all of the work they have to do and help you put that into bite-sized pieces while making sure that you're also looking forward. And at that point, you can share that with your professor. Hey, listen, I know that I am really late on these assignments and I'm sorry. I felt like I was doing the best I could, or I just messed up. And this is my plan that I've developed with my student success counselor, how I'm going to get back on track with my assignments. And ask your professor, is this okay? Can I get credit for these assignments if I turn them all in by this date? Or if I follow this schedule? And see what they think. I think a lot of professors are more willing to work with you than you would think. Are there any other questions at this time? Okay. So I do have the contact information here for our office. If you think of any questions later, if you're like me, 5 minutes from now would be like, oh my gosh, I have all these questions. I didn't think about this well at the time. But we have all these different ways you can get in touch with us. I really recommend our call and text line. A lot of times students can just text in questions and we can answer there. It goes to our office. So we have about 6 people that manage that line at any point during different times in the day. So, you will hopefully get a response very easily there. Our email is also listed and our Instagram. So you can go into our Instagram, you can comment on something that we have posted if you have a question about that, or direct message us if you have something that you might need. And then I did put in there, we do offer scheduled and drop-in appointments as we're available. So if you would like to drop in for an appointment, feel free to use that link. If you need to schedule an appointment, you can do that on Starfish. Or if you're even overwhelmed with that and you don't know what else to do, and you want to meet with someone, but you feel as though you can't get yourself to do it, just call us, text us, email us, and we'll schedule the appointment for you. So I really appreciate you joining today. I hope that you have found some of these strategies helpful, that you will continue to grow in your journey. Don't be discouraged. Be kind to yourself. Remember all the strategies that are here and set a good work plan. Do not trust your brain. I do also have some information on upcoming workshops as well that we offer. So the Student Engagement Office sponsors this Pause and Reflect learning series, and then we have several partners that help us. So you can see the series coordinator there and then the different offices that are presenting on some of these topics. Today I'm presenting to you for the Office of Student Success, but we do have some other sessions that are soon to upcome within the course of the spring 2020 semester, and then you can find more information in your email as there are more workshops added, or in the Choose News, the newsletter sent out from SEO at holyfamily.edu every week, every Tuesday, or check their website. There are a lot of references here. I shared some kind of like research points with you, so I wanted to make sure you had access to those, that you're able to fact check and really go in and learn more about it. Those will be available in the presentation. No need to write those all down now. Thank you so much.